Coming up first on the show, we're going to have Johnny Borland, who's if you've been watching, this is actually pretty good. If you've been watching, anything online, you would have been seeing this show on Netflix called The Tinder Swindler. It is by far one of the craziest, coolest, gnarliest, weirdest things ever. But New Zealand, awesomely enough, has actually managed to create a similar type of scenario. And we're very lucky enough that we've managed to have Mr. Johnny Borland on the show to talk to us about what's happening. He's been in the mix behind it, and I'm very intrigued on this. And if you haven't got in the mix, we'll be able to get into a second. So without further ado, welcome on there, Mr. Johnny Borland. Are you there, my friend?
Clear. How are you?
Yeah, good, brother. How is the Saturday going? What is bubbling away? Where are you and what's happening?
Well, I'm currently out at Karaka rugby fields for the local derby here in the rugby union. So just ducked away to have a bit of a chat, always working in the background doing this Tinder Swindler Kiwi case as well. So I've had a few more emails on that I'm just reviewing. So busy.
So for those that aren't aware, and what I want to get into is the segue into a little bit of the business side. For those that aren't aware, what exactly happened and how were you involved?
So obviously I'm a private investigator by trade, and one of the now several victims contacted me and, said, I've lost all this money, which, equated to $500,000 New Zealand, and wondered, how about would I go to identifying this gentleman and trying to get the money back? So I accepted the job and got her to send over all the evidence that she had, all the information she had from her communications with this entity. And then after reviewing, very minimal amount, I could tell it was a scam. And one thing led to another. I started looking more into it and realized that the MO from the scammers looked to me, from my experience, that it was going to be a lot of victims in this. So I sort of created a strategy and created a bit of an operation behind it. And then, one thing led to another. I got one of my very astute crime journalists that I know in this country involved. And, Sam and I have been sort of ticking away at it over the last sort of week and a half. And it's just going from victim to victim, quantifiable, dollar to dollar. Like, we're talking, by the end of next week, I'm anticipating exceeding $2 million New Zealand dollars in losses.
What's the current number at the moment from what you've pulled together?
So over 1.5 million New Zealand at this stage. So we're just waiting on some more emails and information from other victims.
So what's the game plan? How are they doing it specifically? Is there any type of tech tactic? Is there any type of thing? Like, what's the actual mechanics of how, this guy or group of crew are stealing $2 million from unsuspecting and innocent Kiwis?
Yeah, so it's quite an elaborate and sophisticated ring from what I can gather, in terms of they've done their research. So they're profiling and targeting a certain demographic, which at this stage is between the ages, females between the ages of 45 and 60.
Yep.
So if you look at that age bracket, that's, women that are sort of middle-aged and, they're looking for the love of their life. They're on online dating apps and they are, optimistic and trying to find love.
Mm.
So the scammers are presenting as, well-groomed corporate engineers. And it's always the same MO. It's a male, single father of a kid, engineer, very well-groomed image, which is obviously our next goal is to try and track down who that gentleman is. And we're working with the BBC and a few other places overseas to try and help in that quest. And asking a lot of questions and building a lot of rapport with the victims, and asking the right questions, favorite food, favorite places to travel, really sort of building that relationship early on and making it as intense as possible, as early as possible.
How long are they usually going from, I guess, in business terms would be saying, you've got a pipeline of potential customers. How quick's the conversion rate? So how long from they're engaging, they're obviously targeting these sort of, these innocent women. How long are they getting to the point to actually trying to either ask for money, and how are they converting that? Is it, hey, I need a loan for some business stuff, send me cash, send me a check, here's my bank account info, do you accept, I don't know, like PayPal?
And it's quite similar in essence to anyone that's watched the Tinder Swindler documentary on Netflix, is that it starts off small, and they've got a lot of engineers in place in terms of being able to create phony websites like phony IRS, bank accounts and duplicate to international banks. So you think you're logging onto a legitimate bank, but it's actually a copycat website. So you can actually, the victims are actually logging in onto what they think is a legitimate bank using usernames and passwords, but it's actually a dummy mock-up website. So it's quite sophisticated. And so, they'll be engaging in conversations and getting really intense into the relationship over a number of months before, the first ask comes. And it's only a small ask initially, and then it just sort of builds on and builds on and builds on, because unfortunately the victims, once they start, falling for this person and start, depositing the first time, then depositing the second time, they're sort of in that spiral, and it's terrible. And, before you know it, they're quite significantly in the hole in terms of what they've provided to the scammers.
So how does this play out from here? There's obviously they've been milking and screwing a whole bunch of different Kiwis, playing the whole business card, looking like the corporate savant on LinkedIn or whatever it may be, the engineer with the one kid and whatever, and essentially they're stealing hundreds of thousands, if not potentially millions of dollars by the end of next week. Where does it go to from here? How does it play out? Obviously they would have seen that this is now being reported. Do they just go on to the next victims? Can you track back? How do you think this plays out in the next little bit?
Well, I mean, I hope they've seen it, because I want them to know that I'm coming for them, for starters. Because in my whole career as an investigator, whether it be as a counterterrorism detective overseas or, over here as a private investigator, them knowing that I'm putting pressure on them is going to lead, I think, to, if they're going to be brave enough to continue to try and find victims and take money from victims, eventually they're going to slip up. And when they do, obviously, I'm hoping I'm going to be there to find that crack in their armor, and then just do what I've done my whole life as a career investigator, is just follow the bouncing ball and follow the trail. And if I can get enough assistance from, a really good journalist at Stuff that's really helped us get victims, because with every victim we get, the more accurate we can create a avatar of who the scammers are targeting, which helps with our profiling, which helps us to reverse engineer an investigation. And then if I can get more of my international affiliates on board, we're going to create pressure for the police and the banks to actually do something, because let's not joke around here. They've got the capabilities to do it, and they just give us the diplomatic answer every time is, we're looking into it, we can't comment further.
Which basically means
the more pressure,
good luck.
Yeah, it basically, they're saying, we acknowledge that there's victims, but unlike you, we don't have that sort of empathy that you have, or that tenacity to want to solve it. So, the more we can do, the more victims we can find, the more evidence we can put together, the more international affiliates we can get with journalists and PIs that I know around the world. And the more stuff we're doing, the more we're making, other agencies look like they're not doing enough, which is going to put pressure on them, hopefully, to be more willing to do something.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this right now and you're potentially in that age bracket of 45 to 60-year-old female that's on the prowl for Mr. Right, Mr. Perfect. If you're engaging with someone right now, are there any telltale signs, or is there some type of something which you think they should be looking into to make sure, maybe I'm not getting scammed? Is there telltale signs? Is there some type of hooks? What do they look for?
Yeah, so the obvious thing for me, and the first thing I would ever do if I was in that position, is ask for a FaceTime call. Because it is in 2022, it is very easy for someone to call you via FaceTime, and then you can verify that person is a person they're sending you photos of. And if they start making excuses right away, you've got a red flag to suggest that, hey, maybe they're not being honest.
What if they haven't done their makeup on, or what if they're really busy and they're in bad reception?
Yeah,
what if they're out on the batch? What are they doing?
Yeah, and I mean that excuse might fly the first time, but if they make that excuse the sixth time, you've got to start asking questions. And all you've got to do is, every individual has their own threshold of doubt that they're going to accept that, hey, this is obviously not Mr. Right. And that number is different for everyone. So you've got to come to your own terms in terms of, is this person a fake? And FaceTiming is a great one. Going on mailscammers.com, I said this on the project the other night, it's literally like this huge website that has all the copy from all the scammers around the world uploaded by other peers around the world. And you can literally look and find the preamble and the chat that you're having. If it's a scammer, it'll be on there, word for word, because scammers are basically, they've been doing it for that long now. The one we're doing in New Zealand at the moment, I believe, is a copycat scheme of an original one from like 2016 over in Nigeria. It's just on a far more sophisticated scale now that dating apps have made it an ability to have immediate discussion, whereas back in the 2016s, it was all via email, so it was quite slow. Whereas now we've got instant messaging via dating apps, so they've had to sort of intensify and sophisticate their copy and their chat to the victims.
Got it. Very, very interesting. Well, I appreciate you taking the time on your Saturday. I hope the rest of the rugby goes well, and best of luck catching this bad man doing bad things. And I want to know two things. One, what's the total amount being scammed? And then two, the arrest date would be great for us to report back on. So best of luck for all the missions. Go get him, Cobber.
Yeah, and if I get an arrest date, you'll be the first to know, mate.
Let's go. All right. Hey, really appreciate it, Johnny. Thanks so much.
All right. Cheers, mate. See ya.
Rock and roll. All right. That was Mr. Johnny Borland from Isacorp. He is World Insurance Investigator of the Year. He lives in a pretty crazy world where he literally catches people for a living doing bad things. And it's very awesome that he can, spend a bit of the time to give us a bit of the insight from Tinder. So there you have it. If you're wanting to know if you've got Mr. Right or not, or if he's potentially a scammer, get him straight on the FaceTime straight away and see.